Okay, so I'm going to show you guys how to make the scales on the bottom of life, or really whatever word you would like to do. So in the Silhouette Studio, you want to hit your text icon, and then I use the font Impact, and then I type out life or whatever word you want to do in all caps. Then you want to make it larger. It works easier if you make your words larger, even if you're not going to do something that's 5 inches. Still do it for this purpose. Right click it, ungroup, because you're going to want to add your scales to each letter individually. So now I'm going to line them back up, but I'm going to leave enough space in between them so when I add the scales, I'm able to subtract it on just one letter at a time. So you want to make sure it lines up perfectly in a line. Okay. It doesn't really matter how much space you give in between each letter, because you're going to fix it all before you actually cut. So now that we have life spelled out, I'm going to merge in my scales. I already have the scales saved on my desktop. So go to File and then Merge. Here's my fish scales. And merge it on. So I'm going to move it down here. When I go to trace anything, I like to zoom in on my mat so I can make sure I get a good trace the way I want it. So now I'm going to go to my trace icon, select trace area. I like to do it under this loop and then just down here like at the bottom of that loop, just so I can get even scales, well, as much as possible. And then trace. Move that out of the way. Now you have scales. So you want to delete that. And then you're going to scroll back up on what you're working on. Now you're going to take your scales, line it up however you want. I want to go about halfway up the letter. Excuse my daughter in the background coughing. Alright, and now you're going to just select your first letter in the scales. And then you're going to go to Object, Modify, and Subtract All. Now when I hit Subtract All, watch the L. The inside of the L is going to turn a brighter red. And that lets you know that it's been subtracted. So now it's redder here than it is anywhere else. So move your scales out of the way. And now you have your L is complete. Well, now I need to do the I. To do that, to make sure it lines up, you want to make sure you go up the same distance. So I always come and line it up perfectly. And now I'm just going to move it over on top of my I to where I want it. So that looks pretty good. So I don't want to subtract my L again, so I'm going to select it. And now I'm just going, I move the L out of the way and now I'm going to select the I and the scales again. Object, Modify, Subtract All. Watch the inner of the I gets bright red. That was a little hard to see, but it's there. Scales out of the way, and now you have your L and your I. We're going to pretend like we've done our whole word, so we're going to delete everything else. So once you have, let's pretend this is the whole word. Once you've got it completed, you want to ungroup everything. So select everything and ungroup. So now everything is ungrouped, including each little part of your scale. That's okay. You're going to select the top part of your your L. Move it up out of the way. Same thing with your I. And then you want to group your scales. You want to do it individually. You don't want to do it together, because then it's just going to make it one piece and your space between them is going to be messed up. So just group that back together to make it one piece. Now I don't want this to be the same color, and I like to kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like with the vinyl. So I'm going to select this, and then I'm going to come to my fill color window, and then I'm just going to select a random color. I'm going to do purple on top, and then I want some green scales, so select the green. So this is what it will look like completed. So now I have it ready to cut. To show you how I line it up on my mat, zoom out, select your grid, and then I want this to be in the first 2 boxes and this one to be as well in the first 2 boxes, and just line it up. And then I want my L and my I to be as close to them as possible, but not where it will overlap them. So when I cut, I'll have a square of purple on my mat in the first 2 boxes. So the first 4 make a perfect square is where purple will be. And then the next 4 is where my green will be, with the green overlapping just a little bit into the third on that end. And that is how you make scale letters.